The celestial conclave had ruled the Orion Arm for 10,000 cycles. Composed of 7 ancient species, the crystalline Vaethari, the bioluminescent Zarathi, the hive-mind Krell, and others whose names bent space-time merely to speak, they had long declared themselves divine. Mortals bowed. Civilizations rose and fell at their whim. Their word was cosmic law. Their fleets, vast and shimmering with technologies older than stars, enforced their will without question. Humanity, they had decided centuries ago, was a curious anomaly. Clever, resilient but ultimately insignificant. A species barely out of its cradle, clinging to a pale blue dot on the galactic rim. They had been granted observer status in the conclave's outer halls, a gesture of condescension disguised as benevolence. Humans were to watch, learn, and never presume to speak. That changed with the UNS Persephone. Captain Elias Voss stood on the bridge of his aging destroyer. Its hull scarred from skirmishes humanity wasn't supposed to survive. The Persephone was no match for the conclave's dreadnoughts. Its engines groaned under half power, its shields flickered like dying candles, and its weapons were relics compared to the god beams that could unmake planets. But what it lacked in firepower, it carried in something the conclave had forgotten existed: defiance. The incident began on the neutral world of Illyria 7. A human colony, established under conclave treaty, had been razed without warning. Millions dead, no explanation. Only a single transmission from the Vaethari High Arbiter. Mortals overstepped. Order restored. Voss didn't ask for permission. He didn't file a grievance. He set course for the conclave's primary bastion, a Dyson sphere-like megastructure orbiting a black hole, known as the Sanctum of Echoes. When the Persephone dropped out of warp at the edge of the Sanctum's defense perimeter, every sensor in the system screamed. Alarms blared across 100 command decks. The conclave's sentinels, towering war forms forged from neutronium and dark energy, turned as one, their optics flaring with contempt. "Foolish mammal," boomed the voice of the Zarathi matriarch across all channels, her words laced with harmonic frequencies meant to induce awe and submission. "You trespass in the domain of gods. Surrender your vessel and your species may yet be spared extinction." Voss didn't reply. He simply activated the Persephone's comms array, not to speak but to broadcast. Across every frequency, every subspace channel, every neural link used by the conclave species, he unleashed raw, unfiltered footage. The burning cities of Illyria 7, the screams of children, the silence that followed. Then over it all a single line from an old Earth poet: "All that is gold does not glitter." The broadcast lasted 17 seconds. For the first time in millennia, the conclave hesitated. Then came the attack. 1,000 beams of annihilating light lanced toward the Persephone. Shields collapsed in an instant. Hull plates vaporized. Half the crew died before the emergency bulkhead sealed. But Voss had anticipated this. He'd studied their tactics, their arrogance, their blind faith in their own invincibility. He didn't try to win. He tried to wound. With the last of his maneuvering thrusters, he angled the crippled ship not toward escape, but toward the Sanctum's primary energy conduit, a glowing artery feeding the entire megastructure, and then he triggered the Persephone's final secret: a modified Alcubierre drive core, overloaded and fused with experimental graviton capacitors. Not a bomb, a reality tear. The explosion didn't just destroy the conduit, it fractured local space-time. Gravity inverted, light bent backward. For 3 terrifying seconds, the Sanctum of Echoes stuttered, its perfect geometry unraveling like a dropped tapestry. The conclave's warforms froze, not from damage, but from disbelief. Their systems, their senses, their very understanding of physics had been violated by a species they deemed primitive. In that moment of cognitive dissonance, Voss transmitted one last message, clear, calm, and chillingly human. "You called yourselves gods because no one dared say otherwise. Today we dare." The Persephone was gone, vaporized in the backlash, but its legacy remained. Across the Orion Arm, species long subjugated watched the Sanctum flicker. They saw the conclave's warforms retreat in disarray. They heard the panicked chatter of divine beings suddenly sounding mortal. Within weeks, rebellions ignited on a dozen worlds. The Krell Hive fractured. The Vaethari priesthood splintered into factions. The myth of infallibility had been shattered, not by a fleet, not by a superweapon but by one ship, one captain, and the unbearable weight of human truth. Years later, when the Galactic Concord was formed, replacing the Conclave with a council of equals, humanity was not seated as observers. They were founding members, and above the central chamber, etched into durasteel, hung a simple plaque bearing the name Uns Persephone. She reminded gods they bleed. The Conclave had mistaken silence for weakness, curiosity for ignorance, and compassion for fragility. But humanity had always known the difference between worship and wisdom, and sometimes all it took was one ship, flying straight into the heart of heaven to prove that even gods can fall. When a human decides to stand,